We have a new start time for Iowa football. The UCLA matchup has been announced. We got a ton to get into. We got basketball, we got baseball, we got football, and it's all Hawkeyes, and we got it for you today, all Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes Podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also watch us on YouTube. While you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Well, we got a ton to get into here today. So much news items coming out. Nothing to get real in-depth about, nothing to dig deep on, just kind of a cursory glance and a bunch of different Hawkeye topics that are out there. And the big story of today here on Wednesday is the announcement that Iowa will be playing against UCLA in the Rose Bowl on Friday night, as the Big Ten has announced with Fox 6 matchups over the course of the season that will be played on Big Fox on Friday night, something that we talk about these TV windows. We knew it was going to be coming. I hate it personally, but I know I'm not alone on that front, but there's plenty of people out there that are busy on Friday nights looking for some sport content. I enjoy getting back late and being able to watch some of these games after I'm done finishing up high school football, but it is the new reality, and it's the reality of the Big Ten and what this is going to look like going forward. You're looking for standalone windows. You're looking for opportunities to certainly build an audience, and a game like this with Iowa UCLA, I think, is certainly going to generate interest. When we're talking about this game towards the end of the season, the Hawkeyes, I believe, are going to be a very good team again this season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I anticipate the improvements offensively coupled with an elite level defense coming back this year. And though there are still concerns and there's coin flip games that could go either way, as we know throughout the course of the season, Iowa's just been so good at them. I mean, there's a real possibility when Iowa gets to that point, they'll be 9 games into the season. They're 7-2. Maybe even 8-1. I don't think it's a stretch to say that. Now, it could go the other way. They're also limping in there at 5-4, and we're just talking about getting bowl eligible, and that's the way they're going to wrap up the season. But I expect big things out of this team this year, and I think this one has a chance to be really good. Not only that, it also gives the ability for Hawkeye fans to get out there and also get home. And get home either Saturday or Sunday, take an extra day in LA, do it on the front end of the trip, do it on the back end of the trip. You already know it's going to be a night game. I think that's something that is very nice. I'm making plans, maybe potentially going out to Vegas for a day or two before making my way to LA. That's kind of the game plan that I'm working through right now, and checking with the missus at home, also trying to make that happen. But that's what we're talking about right now, and these are fun. Now, West Coast trips for Iowa football, certainly under Kirk Ferentz, have not gone very well. You go back to the 2004 season, losing to Arizona State, and just the bludgeoning that they took in that game. Had the weather delay before the game even began, and then just were absolutely run off the field by an Arizona State team that was pretty good, but Iowa played their worst game of the season. It wasn't even close. A week later, they go out to Michigan, played better, ultimately falling in that one 30-17. And then they ripped off 7 consecutive victories to end the regular season and capped off the season with the win in the Capital One Bowl. Drew Tate to Warren, and the touchdown that I think Hawkeye fans certainly will remember where they were if you were around for that one. West Coast trips continue. Another one out to Arizona. That one a few years later didn't go well. Iowa battled their way back. It just felt like they were pushing the boulder uphill all game long. And Nick Foles and company got it done. A missed extra point by Trent Mossbrucker was definitely big in that one too. And that's where we were. And afterwards, Kirk Ferentz basically said, well, we're not going west anymore. It's something that he didn't want to schedule. We saw the home and homes that happened after that. You had, Syracuse, Pitt, schools like that. And then with the change from 8 Big Ten games to 9, and basically any of those home and home series that we see outside of the Iowa State game have gone away. Well, now with these new additions, when the conference schedule comes out, you have flexibility. You're going to go where the conference tells you you're going to go, and that's going to mean a road trip this year to UCLA, next year to USC. Good news also, this UCLA team under Foster in year number 1 is not going to be very good. I think this is going to be a Hawkeye party. I anticipate we're going to see a ton of fans out there. And if you made that long trip out to the Rose Bowl before, and, well, unless you're really old, it has not gone very well. 1980, 85, 91, 2015. Yeah, those have not been pretty. So a potential to actually see a win in the Rose Bowl. That's not a bad thing either. Look, it's not the Rose Bowl, actual bowl game, but it's going there. A chance in November to get to LA doesn't sound like a bad thing to me either. Hawkeye fans, let's make it a big party. Should be a good one there. But again, Friday night, that game will now be played as we look forward at the schedule this season. So that'll be a Friday night game, 8 o'clock Central Time kickoff, 6 o'clock if you're out there at the game for the matchup. Now, a couple of weird circumstances about this. First of all, it'll be a quick turnaround after playing back-to-back home games against Northwestern in Wisconsin. They'll go on the road. It'll be a short road trip, quick turnaround, for the game, just 6 days in between. So you're talking about a short turnaround. And then you get a long stretch off because Iowa has a bye week following that UCLA game. And they'll have 15 days off before the final 2 games of the season, another road trip to Maryland, and then another quick turnaround against Nebraska. I was, in a way, a little bit hopeful that maybe the Maryland game would be that one that'd be designated on the 23rd, move it to the 22nd, and be played on a Friday before the Black Friday matchup against Nebraska. Give Iowa a full week to prepare for the Cornhuskers. As I mentioned the other day, every dayers, you know this. I've never been a person over the last 2 decades that has been a big believer in Nebraska. A lot of smoke, not much fire that has come out of Nebraska throughout the years. And I've made some money too over on FanDuel, betting some unders throughout the years on Nebraska. I think they're going to be good this year. And it's not just Raiola coming in there, but it's what they have on the defensive side of the football. And Matt Rule, he's a little goofy. He's a little odd. He's a good football coach and a good college football coach. We'll put it that way. This is a guy I think that's going to have Nebraska back up, revved up, maybe back to the Bo Pelini years where they're consistently winning 9 games a year, 8-9 games a year. I think that's a realistic benchmark, and maybe there can be a breakthrough moment or two. They hit the transfer portal incredibly well, coupled with that good defense and so many returners. I think the Huskers are going to be an even more difficult out. Though Iowa's had their number, we know how close those games have been at the end of the season. So that's what we have right now. We'll continue to look and see what else is out there. Plenty to talk about, though, on the football front. We'll continue to dig deeper and deeper into things as we make our way through the summer months, and plenty to get into. Well, it didn't go very well for Iowa baseball today at the Big Ten tournament. It was a pitcher's duel that didn't go the way of the Hawkeyes. Some big mistakes cost them, and now the road to the NCAA tournament was already difficult. How much more difficult is it? We'll talk about that. We got basketball talk. We'll talk about Peyton Sandfort after a disappointing showing in the NBA draft combine, the likelihood that we'll see Sandfort coming back for his final season in a Hawkeye uniform. Wrestling was some good news throughout this week, and the women's basketball program. And retirement happening. No, not Lisa Bluter. Another retirement in the coaching staff, and a little bit on Caitlin Clark as she wrapped up her matchup here this evening as the Fever fall to 0-5. Ton of topics. We got you covered. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast as we bounce around here. A lot of different things to get into. Let's start with the Iowa baseball team. After qualifying for the Big Ten tournament with the number 5 seed, they face off against 4th seeded Michigan. Now, before this thing even got started, it was supposed to start a day before. We were supposed to see Indiana, Purdue. Everything got pushed back. We're supposed to have 3 games on Tuesday, turned into 2 games on Tuesday. The shuffling around happened because if you saw the picture on Twitter of the dugout, third base dugout in Omaha, it was a pool. The dugout was literally completely underwater. It was covered in water. So we knew there was going to be a delay. It pushed things back. Brody Breck was very good once again in this one. He finishes the game with 10 strikeouts, but it was a couple of errors. And in a 3-2 loss, Iowa, it wasn't Michigan making plays. That's the frustration. And listening to Coach Heller after the game, you could definitely hear that frustration. Wild pitch leads to 2 runs. Iowa bounces back, ties it up at 2. Then in extra innings, a bases-loaded walk is ultimately dooms the Hawkeyes as they fall. So not only do they fall to the backside of the bracket, and that means you have to be perfect from here on out. A double elimination tournament, you cannot afford another loss, and that means going out there and winning, 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row, whatever it is, to get back into this one. Incredibly difficult to do that, but not only that, because of the upset that happened, number 1 seed and league champion Illinois goes down in the opening round to Penn State. That's who the Hawkeyes are going to have to face off against tomorrow. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. Iowa's got to be ready to go. Anticipate that Obermueller will be the guy that will get the ball in this one. He'll get his opportunity against the Illini. Iowa played pretty well at times against Illinois in that series to wrap up the regular season. Towards the end of the regular season before Florida International at the end at Principal Park. Played pretty well, still lost 2 out of 3 here, but now it's over. And if this falls short, if Iowa goes 0-2 in the Big Ten tournament after what a disappointing year this has been, this is going to go down, I think, as one of the more disappointing seasons, certainly in recent history in Iowa sports. I don't think it's overstated. For a team that had the kind of expectations that they had, if you qualify as a 5 seed, have no shot to be a tournament team short of winning the Big Ten tournament, and then you go 0-2 in the Big Ten tournament. A lot of reasons for it. We know that, but that will go down certainly as one of the more disappointing years in Hawkeye sports. A lot of other things going on. Let's continue here. Locked On Hawkeyes. Let's jump over to some wrestling. We'll save the basketball for last, but a couple of wrestling notes for you. First up on this front. Great story. Absolutely love this. Nelson Brands had his look-like career taken away in his final season this past season as he was part of the Gambling Pro. And we can get into, and we've talked plenty in the past about what happened, how this came out, the potential of some shady things being done by the DCI, how this all came to fruition. And that's a topic for another day. But for the guys that were wrapped up, initially there was that thought, hey, they did something illegal. It's no good, right? Made your bed, you got to lie in it. Well, we found out there's a lot more to this story. Nelson Brands, a guy that really seemed to be ascending, and he was making his way up the podium, a guy that you felt had potential this year of busting through, maybe being a top 3-4 guy in the country at his weight class, and then it was gone. And it looked like he was going to call it a career and he was going to move on. And there was a few things out there, went through everything that you're supposed to. He went through the appeal process with the NCAA. I think as we learned with the NCAA, those knuckleheads were not willing to even listen. And that's the unfortunate part. Doesn't matter if we're talking about Noah Shannon, some of the other players that are out there that were involved in this. What we found out is the NCAA wasn't listening, and we got what we got throughout the course of the season. Nelson Brands was done. And now he comes back and he'll get another shot at redemption. Wrestled about a month ago and wrestled pretty well in a freestyle tournament. So great to see. Absolutely a guy that's very easy to root for. Terry Brands' son, Tom's nephew, and a guy that really is going to, I think, help this lineup out. Maybe can create a little bit of a bridge between the youngest Ferrari that is coming in next season. Still don't have any word about AJ and what's going to happen there. But you do have that part. Angelo, I believe, the youngest Ferrari coming in. You have that component, and you also throw into the mix. I was adding another All-American, as they'll be adding to the mix. Kyle Parco will be coming in from Arizona State, guy that has some really quality victories, All-American status there, building this team up. We talk about it a lot when we're talking about wrestling here on Locked On Hawkeyes, and it's difficult. Penn State has created such a monster that just catching up to them, just even finishing second, the gap is still so significant. Well, the only way you can get better, well, you get better. But secondly, you get better guys. And this is another one where you add to the depth at 141, 149, 149. You got a couple of NCAA qualifiers in the past, and Ratchie and Vinovich from Oklahoma State. So you got both of those guys, but what is their upside? What's the ceiling maybe of both of those guys? Blood round, maybe an All-American, but not going to win a national championship. And it's not to say that Kyle Parco is going to come in there this season and win a national championship. You look at the returning starters there, and though he's had some success against some guys that finished above him on the podium, this is a guy that's definitely going to help out, likely going to be an All-American, has a chance to make his way up the rung. Some good news certainly on that front. As we bounce around here, a lot of different topics here today. Locked On Hawkeyes. We're going to get into the basketball front. We're going to talk men's basketball. Peyton Sandfort and the potential for a return after it looked like maybe he was trending just a couple of weeks ago that he was going to be keeping his name in the NBA draft. Are we coming back on the backside of that one? Plus a big retirement for the Iowa women's basketball team, and some thoughts tonight as it just wrapped up. Caitlin Clark plays her 5th game in the WNBA, and it went like the first 4, at least in terms of the win-loss, but some good things out of Caitlin. We'll talk about that. We roll through. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools that you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a verified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective that sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures that you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination. That's yahoofinance.com. Once again, yahoofinance.com. Back with you one final time. It's Trent Condon with you on today's Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So as we bounce around here, a lot of topics, a lot of different newsy type items as we just give you a little glance at things. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we'll be talking football, a lot of football coming up, and we'll be doing it with our inside guru, Brian Smith, as we'll take a look at a couple more of the incoming players for this recruiting class. 2 guys that maybe can help the Hawkeyes this season, and a couple of offensive skill position players. We're going to talk a little bit about them, the latest commitments that Iowa football's had for the class of 2025, and a little bit more coming your way in your feed tomorrow. Right now, let's talk hoops. And Peyton Sandfort, it didn't go well at the NBA draft combine. So he goes there. He makes the decision that he is also going to not just go through workouts, go through the measurables, do all those things, but also he's going to play in a scrimmage. Those scrimmages are some bad basketball. And for a player like Peyton Sandfort that needs to work off the screens, needs to have plays set for him to get a shot, those kind of things, it is not the right environment for his strengths. And you saw that. Struggled to get a shot off. When he was able to get the opportunity, there just wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room. But that's one thing. And scouts and evaluators and GMs, they also know that part of it. They understand some of the limitations in the setting that they're playing at that you're going to get from a number of these guys. It's not a death knell if you play poorly in these. But when you couple it with what we saw out of the measurables, when Peyton Sandfort struggled in the vertical leap, a lot of the athleticism tests that you have, that also, I believe, added to some of the issues for Peyton Sandfort. Another thing about Peyton, when you look back at his numbers, and something that, all these coaches and GMs, if they're thinking about drafting him potentially in the second round, are looking at, is the inconsistency that we saw from him over his first 3 years on campus. Now, the first year, he was just trying to find his spot, right? Finding a place in the rotation. He was the 8th, 9th, 10th guy in there. Come in. We know he's a designated shooter. That's what he's going to come in. Had a slump, but was able to bounce back. His sophomore year got off to just that hideous start in Big Ten play, and then turned it around and shot it at a high level. And you also saw that inconsistency this year. If Peyton Sandfort decides to come back for another season, that's something that he needs to iron out. He needs to show that ability to be a consistent scorer, a guy that can score in all kinds of games. And if the shot's not falling, finding other ways to get involved. I thought you saw that at times out of Sandfort a year ago, but it needs to be even better. And that three-point shooting percentage probably needs to be at that elite level. It needs to be 40% plus to be on the radars. Next year's NBA draft is going to be better. There's going to be more depth. Many people will tell you here, this class of 2024, this draft class is maybe as poor as we have ever had. Not in just in terms of top-end talent, who you're going to take number one, who you're going to take in the top 5, top 10, things like that, but just the overall depth of this class, which leads to a guy like Peyton Sandfort having a chance to be selected. But you also have to be smart about it. There's plenty of second-round picks that are done before it even gets started. And if a team doesn't have a plan for you, if you don't get that phone call, hey, we're looking to take you at, I'm just throwing out a random number, 45. We're going to take you at 45. We like you. We like you're going to do. What's the plan? Is it a two-way deal? Is it we're going to put you for a year in the G League? That's the direction we're going to go and give you a real opportunity then in that second season. There has to be a game plan. It can't just be being selected so you're selected. There has to be something behind it. And I think that's something that Peyton Sandfort probably is dealing with right now. You see the mock drafts out there after the performance at the Combine. Those really have dropped back. Remember, we talked about the Yahoo one that had him in number 26 going to the Wizards back before the Combine began. And now a lot of those, he has dropped down the draft list. Ultimately, we're selfish here. This is the Hawkeye Podcast, and what we care about is the Hawkeyes. Peyton Sandfort, hey, it'd be great if he got that shot, got that opportunity, got a two-way deal, and away he went. But selfishly, for Iowa basketball, for the importance of this season, after missing the tournament for the first time in 6 seasons a year ago, Iowa needs to get back. And without Peyton Sandfort, I don't believe they have a roster that's going to be back in the NCAA tournament. You put them back in there, I think at minimum they're on the right side of the bubble and a chance for even more. That's the belief I have of this program, the consistency that they've shown year in and year out in the Big Ten. You know they're going to be a difficult out. They've shown it throughout the better part of the last decade, and I think that will continue, but you have to have Peyton Sandfort back. Finally, a little women's basketball for you. Jenni Fitzgerald announces her retirement. Does not come as a surprise. In fact, if you've been listening here to Lock On Hawkeyes lately, I believe we touched on this a little bit maybe a week ago. Fitz, one of the coaches that probably doesn't get her due. So a couple years back, she made the decision she was going to step back a little bit more. In fact, she was ready to retire and had to be coerced a little bit and talked into coming back. And they found an advisory role. What do they call her? The special assistant to the head coach. So they were able to find that, and they were able to carve out a role. Off the road, not recruiting anymore, didn't have to do any more of that as other coaches kind of moved up the pecking order. But she was able to do some of the things that she's at her best. We know Lisa Bluter, she was the head coach. And then he had Jan Jensen working with the post. And we talk about the development throughout the years that we saw from post players here recently. Monica Sonano, Hannah Stolke, going back to Player of the Year, Meg Gustafson. And there's been a whole lot more. And that's what Jan does. But Fitz did the guards. Was her expertise, is working with the guards, and did an incredible job. I mean, you think back of the great players the last 20 years in the backcourt that Iowa had, and it was a lot of work that Fitz was putting in with these players. But also here the last couple of seasons, Coach Fitz was the one, she was a Caitlin whisperer. That's how it was relayed to me. She was the one that when Caitlin was getting out of line, she'd be the one to tell her to step back. She'd be the one that had to have those difficult conversations. She was the one that could tell her to knock it off when she needed probably to hear that from time to time. And she was incredibly important. Not only that, I had the game plan, what they did against South Carolina 2 years ago in that Final Four game down in Dallas, pulling that huge upset and punching their ticket into the national championship game. A great scout, a great coach, and somebody that, look, with Jan Jensen taking over, I don't want to say that she's going to be forgotten, but it's going to be about Lisa and Jan. But there were three, and all three of them had an incredibly important part of building up this team, getting them to back-to-back national championships, getting them to an Elite Eight. All three of them deserve a lot more credit. And hopefully here, people will not forget just how important Jenni Fitzgerald was to this team, to this state, and what she did for Iowa women's basketball. Finally, Caitlin Clark. Just wrapped up watching Caitlin here this evening as the Indiana Fever fall to 0-5. Caitlin got off to a slow start again. Basketball not falling for her. The shot was not falling. Really got going in the second half, including the fourth quarter. But had an opportunity maybe to win the game with about 10 seconds left and one of the longest final 12 seconds of a game that I've ever seen. Fumbled a pass. They got the jump ball. Boston then tipped it the wrong direction. Aaliyah Boston's really struggling. Caitlin Clark is figuring it out, but there's still a long ways to go. The physicality of this league, coupled with just awful officiating, it's a tough go. And I think Caitlin's probably going to realize after this season, and maybe when she actually has a little bit of time to get ready for a season, as opposed to what she's going through, obviously this year, right after a month after she finishes up her playing career, playing for a national championship for the Hawkeyes, that physically she's going to have to get stronger. You know, she goes from what feels like a pretty big point guard, you know, a 6-foot point guard in the college level, and watching her and at times the ways that she towered over defenders, not the case anymore. And even the ones that she is taller than, the physicality of this league. She knew it coming in. We all, I think, knew it to a certain degree coming in. But watching more WNBA, certainly, than I ever have in my life, the physicality at times leads to some ugly basketball. It's something that I would like to see cleaned up. In order to do that, you have to have better officials, and that is something we're certainly not seeing in the WNBA. There it was, a potpourri, jumping around a lot of different topics, 6 different ones that we hit on today. Football heavy episode coming into your feed tomorrow. Looking forward to that, talking with Brian Smith, a lot of recruiting, and looking forward to Iowa football coming up and what they're going to have. We'll talk plenty with him. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hey, do you watch Fox Sports, FS1, ESPN all day long? Do you have to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Well, it's time for you to make the switch. It's Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, all streaming 24/7 on YouTube, or you can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got you covered on the Hawkeyes. We got you covered on your favorite team. And thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.